10 Stoic strategies to strengthen your willpower. Willpower is not force, it's fidelity to self. Maybe at some point in your life, you thought a lack of willpower was weakness, that failing to keep silent promises, planned routines, or dream changes meant laziness. But what if it's not that? What if it's not weakness, but too much noise? What if you're not failing because you're weak, but because you've handed over your direction to voices that aren't yours? The feeling of not being in control, of not being able to keep commitments to what matters most, often doesn't come from a lack of power. It comes from a lack of alignment. Have you noticed this? That when you're whole, connected, clear, everything flows? Even challenges feel lighter. But when you're split, every step feels heavy, because willpower, when it lacks purpose, turns into hollow effort, and effort without soul is exhausting. Seneca said, "It's not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It's because we do not dare that they are difficult." There is a kind of courage that doesn't shout, that doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. It's the courage to be loyal to yourself, to silently decide that you will no longer abandon yourself. That fear will no longer be your argument. That doubt will no longer be your excuse. Ryan Holiday reminds us that discipline is freedom, but it's not a freedom that comes from the outside. It comes from a narrow path, yes, but one deeply your own. The path of someone who doesn't depend on motivation to act, who knows that willpower is not a spark, it's a practice, a cultivation, a choice renewed every morning. This video is not about magical formulas, it's about rebuilding a bridge. The bridge between who you are and what you do, between your values and your habits, between your soul and your days. These are 10 Stoic strategies, 10 invitations to return to yourself and remain there, even when no one is watching, even when everything around you screams for you to give up. And before we continue, a sincere reminder, if this message has touched something in you, if you feel it has value, consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and turning on notifications. That's how we stay connected, nurturing day by day this silent flame called will. Strategy 1, define your code before the storm hits. Most people try to decide who they are only after the chaos begins, after temptation, after pressure. But by then, it's too late, because the mind, when pushed, doesn't choose, it reacts. And that's why so many regret decisions made in the heat of the moment. They were made with a thermometer, not a compass. True willpower begins earlier, before the choice, before the conflict, before the test. It's born from what Stoicism calls an ethical anchor, an inner code, a quiet decision about the kind of person you commit to being, even when no one's watching, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. That code doesn't have to be long or complex. It can be a phrase, a reminder, a single line written each morning. Today, I will not betray myself. That small sentence changes everything. Because when the world tries to pull you, you already know your response. When impulse wants to dominate, you already know the way back. When exhaustion tries to paralyze you, you already know there's something greater holding your steps. Like a sailor setting the course before setting sail, you need a compass before the storm. Don't wait for the world to tell you who to be. Decide now, because in the end, true power doesn't lie in resisting temptation. It lies in already knowing what matters more than it. Strategy 2, embrace tiny hard things daily. There's a silent belief that only grand acts shape strong will. But the Stoic knows it's not the size of the effort that transforms, it's the consistency of the friction. Strength isn't born on stage, but behind the scenes, in the small choices no one sees, in accepted discomfort, in deliberate restraint, in the silent gesture only you witness. Willpower is a muscle, and muscles don't grow from reflection, but from tension, and not just any tension, but the kind you accept, the kind you choose. Because every time you do something you'd normally avoid, take a cold shower, go an hour without food, send an honest message that scares you, you're training something deeper than courage. You're training dignity. You are telling the world with your body, mind, and action, I am not a slave to my comfort zone. And that small declaration, repeated daily, changes the architecture of your brain. Dopamine, once tied only to escape or easy pleasure, begins to connect with effort, with commitment, with truth. You don't need daily heroism. You need small shocks of integrity, one friction per day, one hard choice made on purpose. And it is in that purpose that willpower grows, silently, deeply, and unshakably. If this message resonates with you, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more people find this content, and perhaps discover that they're not alone in the search for a steadier, truer life. Strategy 3. Identify your hidden leaks of energy. Willpower doesn't always fail because it's weak. Sometimes it fails because it's drained. And not every drain is visible. There are silent leaks that empty the soul, unfinished thoughts, unreviewed promises, postponed decisions, environments saturated with noise, each one small, but together lethal. It's like trying to hold back a river with a leaky bucket. No matter how hard you try, it never seems enough. The Stoic mind understands that energy is not infinite. That's why it must be treated as sacred. It's not just about what you do, but about what you let in. Every unsilenced notification, every unfinished conversation, every "I'll get to it later" becomes an open tab inside you. And those tabs drain not just your focus, but your presence, not just your time, but your clarity. That's why the practice is simple but powerful. Self-inventory, every day. What tabs are open? What noise is active? What are you tolerating that deep down you know is costing your sanity? Closing those leaks isn't control, it's self-respect. It's care for the ground where your willpower grows. Because even the strongest dam will collapse if the cracks go unseen. And the same happens with your discipline. To strengthen yourself, protect yourself. And to protect yourself, know where you're leaking. And if this journey makes sense to you, turn on notifications. Each video here is a reminder, your will isn't small, it just needs room to breathe. Strategy 4. Master your inputs, not just outputs. Many people try to control outcomes without realizing the real battlefield lies in what they allow in. The mind is shaped above all by the stimuli it receives. And when those stimuli are noise, chaos, comparison, willpower starts the day already at a disadvantage. It's not a lack of strength, it's an excess of toxins. Seneca warned, "Associate with those who will make you better." And this isn't just about people. It applies to content, environments, sounds, ideas. Everything that enters you without a filter shapes your decisions without permission. And the most dangerous part is how subtly it happens. A poorly processed phrase, a video that triggers fear, a headline that poisons hope, and without realizing your will no longer belongs to you, it becomes a reflection of what you've absorbed. That's why the Stoic ritual is silent, yet radical. Begin the day with no external noise. The first hour is reserved for clarity. No social media, no demands, no distractions, just wisdom, presence, or silence, because a mind that wakes up clean stays stronger throughout the day. A river is not cleansed by the strength of its current, but by the purity of its source. The same goes for willpower. It's not about effort quantity, but input quality. Begin within. Begin in silence. Because when you protect what comes in, what flows out of you becomes more authentic, more powerful, more yours. Strategy 5. Cultivate a sacred hour of no negotiation. There's one hour of the day that defines all others, an hour that, when honored, realigns the soul's compass. But when neglected, scatters the mind. This hour doesn't have to be the first of the day, but it must be inviolable. No excuses. No negotiation, a sacred space reserved only for you, for what truly matters. The greatest enemy of will isn't failure. It's the whisper of "just for today." It's the "just this once." It's the seductive voice that says it's okay to break rhythm, that you'll make up for it tomorrow. But tomorrow never makes up for today's betrayal. Because every time you abandon yourself, something inside takes note. And that note weakens your bond with your own word. Establishing a non-negotiable hour isn't about rigidity. It's about loyalty, a daily reminder that you can trust yourself, that there is a space in time and in soul where the world cannot enter, where there are no compromises, only presence. It can be for writing, meditating, moving your body, or learning. The form doesn't matter. Only the fidelity does. Like a monastery bell that doesn't explain, it simply rings. Your sacred hour needs no justification. It simply happens. And by happening, it trains your mind to understand that there are boundaries, that there are choices, that there are commitments that do not break, even if no one is watching. Because the deepest discipline is done in the dark, when only you know it was fulfilled. Strategy 6. Rehearse saying no without apology. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from physical effort, but from the lack of boundaries, a silent drain that sets in every time you say yes when you really mean no. And that false yes, repeated often, begins to dissolve integrity until you no longer know where you end and the other begins. Most people don't give in because they want to. They give in because they fear disappointing others, because they've learned to confuse kindness with self-abandonment. But the Stoic knows true kindness does not require self-betrayal. It offers what it has, but never what it needs to remain whole. Saying no is a spiritual practice, not out of pride, not out of detachment, but from clarity. When you learn to say no with serenity, without guilt, without over-explaining, something aligns within. You stop being a hostage to others' expectations and become loyal to your center. The practice is simple yet powerful. Write one no per day, silently, aloud, to small things, to invitations that don't resonate, to expectations that don't fit, because every true no is actually a yes to what matters, a yes to your peace, a yes to your path. A boundary is not a wall, it's a door, and when you guard it with dignity, you realize the world doesn't collapse, relationships don't vanish, respect doesn't diminish, it is born, because the soul that knows where it ends walks more freely. Strategy 7. Link your effort to something higher. Some days strength seems to vanish. The body is present, but the soul is scattered. It's not laziness, it's disconnection, because effort without meaning becomes a burden, but effort with purpose turns into fire. The difference is not in the task, but in the root it grows from. Human willpower weakens when driven only by external goals. When everything is about results, numbers, approval, sooner or later, motivation runs dry. But when something greater supports your steps, something you honor, something you serve, discipline gains a soul. You can choose what moves you. You can tie your journey to the courage you want to leave your children. You can dedicate your efforts to your future self, who needs a firm foundation. You can walk not for applause, but for truth. And when you do, the weight feels lighter, because a burden with meaning weighs less. Create a small altar in your routine, an image, a phrase, a memory, something that reconnects you when everything feels meaningless, something to remind you that your effort isn't just about you. It's about all that will be touched by your steadiness. The longest lasting flame is not the one that burns for itself, but the one that lights others around it. And that light begins with a quiet choice. The choice to act not out of ego, but out of legacy. Strategy 8. Track integrity, not perfection. It's easy to fall into the all or nothing trap. To believe it's only worth continuing if everything is perfect, clean, intact. But the truth is, life isn't built from flawless consistency. It's built from returns, from small restarts, from a renewed decision, even after failure. Shame is born when we confuse mistakes with final defeat, when we believe that falling once is a sign of weakness. But what builds strong will is not the absence of falls, it's the choice, repeated, quiet, humble, to come back, to return to yourself, to return to what matters. Don't count how many times you failed. Count how many times you had the courage to return, to reclaim your truth, even after drifting, to resume your path, even among the ruins. The Stoic is not flawless. He is whole. And integrity is not perfection. It is coherence between what you value and what you choose, even after stumbling. Create a space to track your integrity. A notebook, a note, a daily question. Did I return to myself today? This small practice, done honestly, rebuilds inner trust. And that trust is what sustains your strength on the days when everything shakes. The sun also fails to rise right on time sometimes, but it always returns. And its light is dependable not because it is perfect, but because it is constant. Strategy 9. Use obstacles as emotional reps. There's a false belief that emotional resistance means it's time to stop. But in Stoic philosophy, the obstacle is not a wall, it's a weight. And weights don't exist to block you, they exist to strengthen you. Every time something contradicts you, there's an opportunity there, a chance to train your will like you train a muscle. Every discomfort is a rep, every difficulty a set, and the more you practice, the firmer you become. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The obstacle to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This isn't just poetry, it's emotional neuroscience. What you face head-on, the brain learns to recognize, and what is recognized stops being terrifying. The next time something throws you off, try changing the question. Instead of, "Why is this happening?" ask, "What is this training in me?" Maybe it's patience, maybe it's clarity, maybe it's presence. Imagine a sword. It isn't forged through contemplation. It's forged in fire, impact, and heat. And still, every strike isn't destruction, it's refinement. With every blow, the metal takes shape. With every challenge, your will gains focus. This is the call. Stop avoiding the weight and start training with it, because only then, little by little, the soul learns to be strong without being hard, steady without being closed, unshakable without being insensitive. Strategy 10. Ritualize return after failure. The moment we lose ourselves the most is right after we fail. Not because of the mistake itself, but because of everything that follows. The relentless self-criticism, the quiet shame, the sudden urge to disappear. But it's not the error that destroys. It's the absence of a clear way back. Most people give up not because they failed, but because they never learned how to restart. The Stoic knows it's not what happens that defines us, but how we respond. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And the best reaction sometimes is simply to return. Create a ritual of return. 3 simple steps. First, pause, breathe, step out of the storm, then reflect. What pulled you away from yourself? What does this failure reveal about what still needs attention? Finally, begin again. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. Now, with a small action, a symbolic gesture that says, "I'm back." Science confirms self-compassion is not indulgence. It's strategy. People who treat themselves with kindness after failures persist longer, not because they demand less, but because they recover better, because they don't abandon themselves in the stumble. Think of a warrior. He doesn't stay on the ground. He rises, he bows to the experience and continues, because he knows his strength is not in the fall, but in the dignity of each return. And that's what builds indestructible will, the courage to come back again and again and again. The will is a flame, not a chain. There is a silent confusion that destroys many inner journeys. The belief that willpower is a chain, something rigid, oppressive, painful. But the Stoic truth is different. Willpower is not a prison. It is a flame that does not scream, does not demand, does not impose. It simply burns. Steady, present, constant. Seneca reminds us, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. And what wastes our inner strength is not weakness, it's disconnection, the incoherence between what we claim to value and what we actually practice, the distance between our soul and our choices, the absence of an inner thread guiding our steps with truth. Ryan Holiday puts it precisely, you don't rise to the level of your expectations, you fall to the level of your training. And the training of willpower is not heroic, it is discreet. It is built in the silence of the choice no one sees, in the decision no one applauds, in the daily return to what matters most. The flame of will doesn't need to be fueled by motivation. It needs coherence, integrity, a deep commitment between who you are and who you choose to be, even when you're tired, even when you fail, even when the world doesn't understand. So every night ask yourself, today, did I live from within, or did I borrow my strength from the world out there? Because in the end, what matters is not the intensity of a single moment, but the constancy of presence, the daily care, the fidelity to your own center. You don't need to force the flame, you just need to keep it burning. Tend to the fire, silently, tirelessly, because it's there, in that light that doesn't go out, that your most serene power lives. If this message touched something in you, consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and turning on notifications, not out of impulse, but as part of your own ritual of return, of presence, of truth. Because if there's something in you that still wants to grow, this is only the beginning.